Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video. This is a Ukraine war news video for the 12th of April 2023. Sorry it's a little bit later today. It was like all my Christmases came at once as an atheist philosopher and author of many books on religion or lack thereof. The Jehovah's Witnesses just came around. I have primary progressive multiple sclerosis, as many of you know. I've never moved that fast, well, not in the last 4 years anyway, hobbling down the stairs. Hang on, I'm coming. I want a debate. Let's have this out. Anyway, they left completely deconverted. No. So that's why I'm a little bit late. So sorry about that. Okay, let's go to the usual opening gambit for the news update, which is the Ukrainian losses for the Russian forces the day before. All the usual caveats, propaganda, inaccurate. I find these indicatively useful. The trends are they do tell you something. So actually an uptick in troops lost. What does that tell us about the day before? So 730 is the front line starting to heat up again. That said, the tanks and APCs and other equipment is slightly down on the day before. So 2 tanks, 5 APCs, 5 artillery systems. That artillery system number is fairly consistently that or above. And as I keep saying every day, that shows a concerted effort to do counter-battery work to take out artillery explicitly, and that also translates into taking out pieces of special equipment. So radar systems, counter-battery radars of the Russians. So 3. If you look at the total there, 319. The war's been going on for 400 days plus. So the average over the war is less than 1 a day. But we are seeing 3, 4, 2, every single day at the moment. And that shows, well, in my opinion, it shows that they are really putting in an effort, the Ukrainians, into taking out those installations and bits of equipment. 10 vehicles and fuel tanks, 2 drones. So fairly kind of average across the board, but we might start seeing a greater number of troops lost. Okay, don't have too much on the hits and losses today. There's an awful lot on leaks and another big piece of news that I'm going to share with you in a second. So in Russia, in temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, 7 cemeteries of Wagner PMC mercenaries have been discovered, in which at least 995 people are buried. This is reported by Russian service of the BBC. So they've been doing a lot of research on looking at the deaths of the Russian forces by scouring social media and official releases and declarations of funerals of people who have died as a result of the war. They've been really explicit on saying that we have to have evidence that this is definitely war deaths. So this is your super conservative minimum numbers that they've come up with. Really useful, a bit like Oryx does with the vehicle losses. Well, BBC Russia, and in conjunction with Medusa, which is a Russian independent media outlet, which I think has been exiled. Well, they all have. So now they're looking at Wagner. So this is your bare minimum of Wagner. There are 995 that we know of at the moment. At least 995. Burial sites, graves of Wagner fighters. So the very minimum deaths that they have, and bear in mind a number of them will be lost, will be unknown bodies, would have been like blown up, are still lying in the ground, or have been cremated in the mobile crematorium, crematoria, so on and so forth. So 995, I don't know what you'd multiply that by to get the actual number, but that is your bare minimum. And that, again, when you're trying to work out what the deaths are, what's an accurate representation of the Russian losses, you kind of have some idea by feeding in these different figures. Right. Wagner Group founder Prigozhin says on video today that he has handed the right and left flank, so I assume that's the north and the south, to the regular Russian army. This is something that ISW has been reporting for the last week or so, that you're starting to see VDV airborne troops, even Spetsnaz, DPR, the Spetsnaz are these special forces troops. So you're starting to see them in the Bakhmut area, and that tells you that the Wagner PMC are struggling to recruit, are struggling to regenerate their forces that have been lost, and we've just seen, they are taking losses. And that he's now admitting that. So that's the ISW claims are confirmed by Prigozhin himself. The left and right flanks. So I mean that's 2/3 of the Bakhmut kind of geographical area are now being given over to conventional Russian forces. and he's also said to be cooperating with a political party, A Just Russia for Truth, presumably to advance his political aspirations. Interesting. We'll see where that goes. Okay, Russians have been striking all the normal places like Marnets and Nikopol, north of the reservoir, the Dnipro, north of Enerhodar nuclear power station. They hit those industrial towns quite a lot. Here, Kherson has been hit, repeated shelling, launched an airstrike actually here, on the territory of one of the enterprises of the city of Berislav. So that's the other side of the Don, just to the northwest of Kherson along the river. And although, that is airstrikes, Kherson itself has been hit as well by shelling over the last day. Nothing unusual, but I presume these airstrikes are using these dumb munitions that have been adapted to give them guidance and fins, greater range. There's a talk of a lot of these being used in the area, and indeed yesterday I reported on those being used in Berislav as well. So it's almost certainly that's what that was. In the Saratov region in Russia, a fuel storage site burned down. So another case of Russia on fire. A fuel storage depot is important for Russia to be able to commit to the war, to provide their forces with fuel. There is I don't know, maybe that fuel is used for commercial reasons and so on and so forth, but that is an indication possibly of renewed partisan activity within Russia, or it could just be hit by a drone or something from Ukraine. I don't know, but it's blown up or it's been on fire. Right, let's go to other bits and pieces. Right, the biggest piece of news that everyone is talking about right now is the absolutely disgusting beheading of a Ukrainian prisoner of war by Russian forces. Russians filmed, says Igor Lechenkov, Russians filmed a terrible video of brutal beheading of a captured Ukrainian soldier. This is yet another monstrous crime of Russian army and a violation of all conventions and moral principles of humanity. You have to realize that such a thing would never happen in the 21st century. This is pure terrorism. It should never happen, A literal torture to death, an execution of a helpless human that screams in agonizing pain for help and begs not to kill him. Everyone should understand this and take measures. Right, this is bona fide what's happened. Everyone admits this has happened. This is a horrible video. I've seen a very blurred out version through squinted eyes. I didn't really look at it, but you kind of get the idea. I don't want to look at stuff like that. I want to be dehumanized and desensitized. But it's happened. And lots of sort of fallout from this. So as Tim White says, surely the question's got to be asked. Surely Antonio Guterres has to do something. So this is the idea that, as Dmitry Kuleba, who's a foreign minister for Ukraine, I believe, a horrific video of Russian troops decapitating Ukrainian prisoner of war is circulating online. It's absurd that Russia, which is worse than ISIS, is presiding over the UN Security Council. Russian terrorists must be kicked out of Ukraine and the UN and be held accountable for their crimes. Really strong words there, and something I completely agree with. CNN, I've just seen this, has found another video of the beheading of the Ukrainian military, where the conditions on the video indicate that the execution took place recently, and it's carried out by Wagner Group mercenaries. So there's some now, if that's the same execution as they imply here, there were some claims that the video was actually from some time ago, from maybe last summer. And this CNN video makes a claim that actually it's much more recent than that. If it's from last summer, there's some, I don't know, the Russians can get away with, that happened ages ago, it's happened a long time ago, don't worry about it type thing, right? But as if it's happened more recently, it has that kind of, I don't know, there's a proximity bias that we have. So we will record it more importance, and actually it makes it worse if it's happened more recently, I guess, is that kind of tack. Right, Dmitry from War Translated, this is his own personal kind of rant, but I'm going to read it anyway, so I think it sums up what many are thinking. Some asked to translate comments so he usually translates either videos of things like that happening, well, not that graphic, but videos of Russians saying stuff, or he translates comments in Russian social media in response to things that have happened. So he said some asked to translate comments of Russians after the brutal beheading video that surfaced today. But what's the point? We've been seeing their reactions to similar events for over a year now. They're always the same. A few people say it's terrible. The majority will quietly approve of it. And those who are vocal will be saying it's fake or they deserve it. If someone is still not aware, Russia is a savage state with lots of effed in the head Nazi people and their quiet supporters. Only a small fraction are genuinely adequate. This country promotes criminals to kill foreign people and sets barrier troops so that the convicts couldn't retreat. It shells indiscriminately, poisons and murders internally and abroad. Even its street culture is absolutely effed up if you take off the rose-tinted glasses of a tourist. None of this is new to those who are familiar with this country. If Russia was strong enough and Ukraine was too weak, this would have been happening anywhere else. The only question is how many videos like these need to surface for Ukraine to be provided everything it needs to stop this Antichrist. Really important statement, or a really reflective statement of what a lot of people are saying. Right, this is kind of open season now. Give Ukraine what they need. As someone says below, I'm a Hungarian. I think this is an interesting comment. I have oblivious grandparents who only listen to state media. This is why I need these translations, so I can show them. They are not on Twitter, barely online. I am the only one who tries to give them a snippet of the true world outside of Orban. I'm not alone. I think that's a really interesting call for Dmitry to translate stuff so that he has ammunition to take to people who are just absolutely oblivious to anything that's outside the Russian state media narrative. And that includes people in Hungary, people in Serbia, people in any country around the world. I've talked to people who are eminently reasonable people who have sucked in Russian talking points. It's really easy to do so. It's almost as if like the US is imperialistic, and therefore there's a part in me that wants to be anti that, right? And so Russia is kind of the minnow compared to the US, and their state is almost like the Russians are the underdogs. So it's that desire to support them. No. Let's get this properly accurate. You know, let's look at the moral dimensions here. Let's look at the political dimensions here, and so on and so forth. And you get some people trying to explain this away as kind of like, this is war. This has always happened in war type thing. It's like, yeah, maybe it has, but it doesn't have to. That's the kind of like almost a naturalistic fallacy, or the kind of it happens naturally in war. Therefore, it's what should happen, or what we should just accept that. No, we can change that. And actually, you know, British forces in Falklands didn't do that. British forces in Afghanistan didn't do that. You know, say what you like about the British, but our armed forces don't go around beheading people. So what's going on here? And, well, what do we do about it? Well, the Ukrainians have already got their security services in Ukraine. They've launched a pre-trial investigation into the brutal execution of the Ukrainian military, and as part of their criminal code. And Zelensky's come out and said his piece as well. So let's just go through what he has said. Just to give you an idea, right? He says there is something that no one in the world can ignore: how easily these beasts kill. This video, the execution of the Ukrainian captive, the world must see it. This is a video of Russia as it is. What kind of creatures they are. There are no people for them: a son, a brother, a husband, someone's child. This is a video of Russia trying to make just that the new norm. Such a habit of destroying life. This is not an accident. This was the case earlier. This was the case in Bucha. Thousands of times. Everyone must react. Every leader. Don't expect it to be forgotten. That time will pass. We are not going to forget anything. Neither are we going to forgive the murderers. There will be a legal responsibility for everything. The defeat of terror is necessary. No one will understand if the leaders don't react. Action is required now, and we in Ukraine must focus on the front line as much as possible, help as much as possible, expel the occupier from our land. The main goal is to win. The main goal is strength for Ukraine to win. Defeat of the occupiers, sentences to murderers, tribunal for the evil state, eternal memory to every person whose life was taken by Russian terror. Glory to all those who fight against this evil. Glory to Ukraine. So that's his response. That was just, filmed in his own office on his phone. Nothing too like pre-prepared. Just a kind of like a call to action, a call for there to be a reaction by international leaders to resolve this issue of Russians invading and doing war crimes. And it'll be interesting to see whether this does shape the politics for the days to come, whether there is any official reaction from different countries. It's absolutely terrible. That is a terrible instance of a complete lack of humanity, and it is a most obvious war crime. Again, to Russians out there, pro-Russian voices, whose side are you on? Just, what do you say to this? Don't come onto my thread and go rah, 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 and expect to adopt the moral high ground here. How do you explain that? Do you explain it away? Did they deserve? Did that person begging for his life deserve it? You deserve to be beheaded. How do you explain it? Right. So moving on from that, there will be lots about that. Bear in mind over the next couple of days for sure. So going on to the leaks again, there's just so much coming out about these leaks. Shashank Joshi for The Economist defense correspondent wrote my piece for The Economist on the leaked US intelligence documents. The Department of Defense statement all but confirms the docs are authentic. Most experts and officials I spoke with suggest that the breach is very serious and very damaging. It also comes at a bad time for Ukraine. And he also refers to the piece in the Washington Post that I dipped into yesterday. Now, pretty much everyone says that these are not psyops. These are not. These are genuine leaks. And I think I would agree with that. These are genuine leaks. Okay, what do we do about it? What do they say? Is it really properly damaging? And yeah, it is damaging. And I'll go on to show you other examples of why it's damaging. Here's one example. Now, I have said before previously that Allied special forces are almost 100% certainly on the ground in Ukraine, not on the front line, but they are operating. I won't go into why I'm claiming that, but it's almost certain. And then actually, you can expect that in any kind of similar war like this. I know that our special forces, UK armed special forces, operate in way more places than the general public realise. They are all over the shop in a whole number of places. And yeah, we kind of, because we don't know, we either then don't want to know, or we are just genuinely ignorant. But it's just the nature of the clandestine operations that support, political posturing or political policy making, or our own, agenda abroad. Now, the Ukraine war leaks have shown that Western special forces groups are on the ground. That's so according to the document dated 23rd of March, the UK has the largest contingent of special forces in Ukraine. Again, that doesn't actually surprise me. Our special forces are, as I say, they do a lot of work. 50 of them, followed by fellow NATO states, Latvia 17, France 15, the US 14, and the Netherlands 1. Document does not say where the forces are located or what they are doing. Numbers of personnel may be small and will doubtless fluctuate, but special forces are, by their very nature, highly effective. Their presence in Ukraine is likely to be seized upon by Moscow, which has, in recent months, argued that it is not just confronting Ukraine, but NATO as well. This is true. So I've been careful to talk about this before. I have mentioned it, but I'm dwelled on it. I don't have an issue personally. I don't have an issue with special forces being in Ukraine doing training or sorting stuff out, whatever it is behind the lines. They won't be anywhere near the front lines because the risk of losing a special force or them being captured is so huge that they just wouldn't do that. But they'll be doing funky stuff behind the lines. A lot will be supporting and training. I would have thought, and advising. But yeah, certainly active. Now, what will Russia do in light of this? Is this escalatory? And actually, if it is escalatory, just get on and provide Ukraine with everything then. Just, oh dear, the leak's out. Yeah, they know we've got special forces there. Okay, right. ATACMS. 1,000 more Bradley, load of Abrams. You know, I know I'm concentrating on the US here, but because they've got the biggest set of kits, right? But this could be the moment that you see that kind of activity, right? I'm not showing you the list here, but the leak is significant because there's a list, supposedly. I don't know why this guy's actually shared the list, but a list of US CIA agents in Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. So these leaks are really quite damaging. Now, if that's genuine, I mean, Russia will be on that. Like, if that's being shared on Twitter, Russia are on it. Yeah, these leaks have huge ramifications. Right, moving off the leaks, and again, the stuff to do with the leaks will be featuring in my news pieces, I'm sure, for days to come. Zaporizhzhia. So the UK intelligence update says, over recent weeks, Russia has continued to develop extensive linear defences in Zaporizhzhia in southern Ukraine. The area is highly likely the responsibility of Russia's southern grouping of forces. Russia has now completed 3 layers of defensive zones across approximately 120 kilometres of this sector. These consist of a front line of forward combat positions and then 2 zones of nearly continuous, more elaborate defences. Each zone is approximately 10 to 20 kilometres behind the one in front. I think Zaporizhzhia is where they're going to attack, but this is super, super important. These are meaningful obstacles that will provide a real challenge for the Ukrainians, and this is why it won't be a lightning counterattack. And this is possibly why, you know, leaked reports or the leaks have shown that America are not as positive about the coming counteroffensive as they might have been, or you know, when you look at the Kharkiv counteroffensive and see how lightning quick that was and how much territory it took in such short amount of time, yeah, Ukrainians won't be doing that, and this is part of the reason. Russia's probably put significant effort into these defensive works because it is convinced Ukraine is considering an assault towards the city of Melitopol. The defensive have the potential, to be formidable obstacles, but their utility almost entirely depends on them being supported by sufficient artillery and personnel. Yes, true. But even without that, you still need an awful lot of bridging and breaching equipment. It remains unclear if the SGF, the Southern Group Forces, can currently muster these resources. So it's trying to like paint that in a positive picture at the end. And then, you know, there's lots of talk about these defences in different sources now. That is a bit of a major talking point. Right, going on to military aid, I'm going to start with this. So talking about Abrams and Bradley. So when I go to bed, every night when I go to bed, I have the same conversation in my head, which is, okay, what would I do? What would happen if I was in charge of X, Y, Z? What equipment can I give? And I always, if I'm in charge of the UK, I'm like, God damn it, we just don't have enough equipment. We just don't have enough stuff. I'll give everything we can, but we don't have a lot. Who has a lot? The US have a lot of equipment. So this is a Wikipedia page, but M1 Abrams tanks, 5,000 in active use, 3,000 stored, right? In the UK, it's like, oh, we've got like 200 Challenger 2 and half of those aren't working, etc., etc. And you look at these numbers, 6,724 Bradleys. 6,724 Bradleys. The US could just say, here's 1,000 Bradleys, and it wouldn't touch the sides. 4,466 strikers, all in different kind of configurations. M113 APCs, 6,000. LAV 25, 870, and assault amphibious vehicles, 1,311, so on and so forth. You get the point. MRAPs, Oshkosh, 8,700, Cougars, 3,500, Max Pros, 9,000, and then Humvees, 160,000 Humvees. It's just insane. Right, so I could go on, you know, self-propelled. I might do a bit of an extra on this, like Avengers, 1,400. Anyway, yeah, the point is that then I'm like, okay, how do we react really big to this kind of news that's been coming out, or how do we get this thing finished? And actually, the only really meaningful difference can be made by the US. In other words, the US are the game changer, right? And it's like, here's 1,000 Abrams. Here's 2,000 Humvees. Here's 5,000 Humvees. Here's 1,000 Bradleys. Here's etc., etc. And yeah, you'd think, oh, that's crazy. Why are America doing the heavy lifting here? Well, because they can. No one else can. And yes, you can slag off why no one else has got the army to do that, blah, blah, blah. But then actually, America have chosen to spend that much on defense for X and Y political reasons and geopolitical reasons. And it all becomes like a minefield of debate there. But the simple point here is that they've got the stuff. They have the capacity to give the stuff, and just do it. Let's get this thing over. Anyway, it's now so the Polish PM has been over in America visiting, and he's visited Kamala Harris, and he's announced that the US will be giving more Abrams and Bradleys. So that's interesting. And this is like, yes. Now I don't know why it's taken so long. Yeah, and they probably are giving already more than they're letting on. But yeah, I'm sorry, US, but you are the main source of being able to help Ukraine here. Go and watch Perun's video on NATO, and although it might seem really one-sided, and why are the US paying all this much money for their armed forces and for NATO, you need to see security as something that they export. So actually, it's not a case of we're paying so much more, you guys aren't doing enough, blah blah blah. They're kind of exporting that security, and they get a lot back for that. It's much more complicated than just thinking, oh god, let's dump this NATO thing, let's get out of NATO because we pay too much. It's really that's way too simplistic and incorrect. Go and watch Perun's video on NATO and security agreements. Okay, sending ATACMS to Morocco. So here's a press release of stuff that's being sent to Morocco, including HIMARS. They're sending HIMARS, and with that, ATACMS. Well, the US has said we don't have enough ATACMS to send to Ukraine, whilst at the same time having enough to send to Morocco. So that's interesting. Now, this is super important. The US and South Korea have agreed on the lease of 500,000 155mm artillery ammunition shells for their further supply to Ukraine. So South Korea can't supply to Ukraine as part of their kind of agreement, a bit like Germany and Switzerland or particularly Switzerland. So what South Korea can do is supply it to the US, and the US can supply their stocks to Ukraine. And that is the way around it. And South Korea, I think, are going to have much more an increasing importance in the military equipment production and ammunition production situation going forward. Pakistan, another one. So these guys they're against India, essentially. India are in BRICS, so they're kind of on the side of Russia, sort of, kind of that difficult line, which means Pakistan don't want to be aligned with India, so they need money desperately. So they are happy enough to be selling equipment and ammunition to the US or to the allies to get to Ukraine. So Pakistan will send 230 containers with weaponry to Ukraine this month. This is hugely important, and that previously has been the talk of 10,000 grad rounds, so on and so forth. So Pakistan are becoming really important because they have the ability to provide Soviet era munitions. Canada has announced a new aid package. It's more to do with small arms and ammunition. So we've had the Prime Minister of Ukraine has been in Canada and the US. So Canada will provide Ukraine with 21,000 assault rifles, 38 machine guns, and more than 2.5 million rounds of ammunition. That's all useful. Japan announced humanitarian aid to the city of Irpin and handed over excavators. That's really good. This kind of stuff is also incredibly needed by the Ukrainians. Another piece of previous unrecorded Finnish military aid to Ukraine. The Ukrainian army apparently received an unknown amount of 112 Riskas Apelas. These are anti-tank rocket launchers, so ATGMs. And the Finnish have been given them. We hear very much about these telegrammed pieces of equipment, like stuff I've just been talking to you about. Canada are giving X and Y. Right? We hear a lot about what Ukraine have been given. But you can bet your bottom dollar that Ukraine have been given an absolute bucket load more than that hasn't been announced for whatever reason. So there'll be countries, all the countries that have been giving aid will have been giving way more aid than that. And this is why I wonder whether the coming counteroffensive, where we know that they've got X amount of Bradleys and X amount of Leopards and X amount of X and Y, whether actually there's going to be just a lot more stuff that we don't know about that they have been given. And that's what I hope from a pro-Ukrainian position. but it could well be the case. Now, Serbia, these leaks have had an effect that has been wide-ranging. Here, Serbia have had to play down or deny that they have been given weapons to Ukraine, because Serbia are more aligned with Russia, but it appears that they've been giving weapons and ammunition to Ukraine, and their defense ministers come out and said, no, these leaks are designed to destabilize Serbia. Well, it turns out the leaks pretty much seem to be accurate and authentic. So these people are going to have to be fighting fire here with trying to deny plausible deniability, but Russia will know what the truth will be there. And just in terms of training, this is just a nice video here. These are I will turn the music off because of copywriting. These are Ukrainian troops leaving training in the UK, and UK soldiers here lining the road and just showing their respect, I guess, to the Ukrainian forces that they've been training for, probably quite some time, forming relationships with them. I think, yeah, really good stuff. Just, showing Ukrainian flags, just their general support as an allied nation, but also as, humans that have been supporting other humans and seeing them on this journey of training. Yeah, fantastic to see. Right, going on to geopolitics. Now, Trump, this is fascinating. At least I'm pretty sure it'd be fascinating. I haven't seen it all, just this clip, which is being interviewed by Tucker Carlson, who has kind of pro-Russian tendencies. It's been peddling the Russian narrative quite a lot. He's interviewed Trump. Now, Trump here has said
Ukraine, what did you say to him?
An interesting response here.
To Putin about Ukraine, what did you say to him?
I could see that he loved it. And I said...
he loved Ukraine.
He considers it to be a part of Russia.
Yeah.
I said, not when I'm president.
You talked to...
So, which is an interesting response. He's now positioning himself strongly, like it seems, against Russia there. The interesting choice of words, though, that I have a real problem with. I saw that he loves Ukraine. Maybe it's just a slip of the tongue. Like he loves the idea of having Ukraine in his empire. He doesn't love Ukraine. If you love, that's the most abusive relationship I've ever seen. I love you. By the way, I'm just going to punch you around the face because I love you. No. So, Russia has invaded Ukraine. It doesn't do that to someone it loves. It has no love for its culture. It's trying to eradicate its culture and its language and its people and its buildings and its cities. There is no love there. There is a utility. Ukraine has a utility for Russia, for Putin. And that's all you need to know. So I think it's really, like, on the one hand, I should be shouting about this is wonderful. It's great that Trump is standing up and at least position himself to being not so Putin, not so pro-Putin. But remember Helsinki, where he supported Putin over his own intelligence agency. So there's a really interesting dynamic going on there. But he's misunderstands what Ukraine is to Putin and to Russia, and I think that's possibly a bit dangerous. But at least he's positioning himself broadly in the right place. Right, Kiev's upscale shopping center seized from Russian tycoon, now owned by the Ukrainian state. The high anti-corruption court decision came into force on the 11th of April. Ocean Plaza was owned by Russian oligarch Rotenberg, owner of the company constructing pipelines. This is really good. This is where Ukraine can start clawing stuff back from Russian influence, from Russian oligarchs, and say, right, this is ours. And if that's state-owned, then hopefully that'll be a cash cow for the state, or at least have income coming into the state. Ukraine needs to get back on its feet, and there will have to be state-owned enterprises that are making money for Ukraine to be able to, make the government sustainable economically speaking. And eventually, 20 years down the line, you can privatize this back again or whatever. But they need income streams, don't they? And no better way of getting that quickly than seizing them off the Russians. Kel Surprise talking about income streams, this time a Western company. This is a company based in France, allegedly eager to gorge in the trough of blood money, says Tim White. Absolute Vodka. So Absolute Vodka is a Swedish vodka company, but it's owned by Pernod Ricard. And so it may pride itself as a vodka from Sweden, but it's owned by Pernod Ricard. And this paper reports that they've resumed exports to Russia. And it's the idea is, money over morality, isn't it? And when you're answerable to your shareholders, I guess that morality plays second fiddle. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes. Human nature. Okay, thank you. That's today's news segment. Hopefully, a useful set of bit of information for you on what is going on in and around the Ukrainian conflict. Please like, subscribe, and share. And check out my future videos today on the Frontline and the extra I have penned for later. Toodle pips.